There isn't any reason to continue the war in Gaza. The only reason is that the Israeli Prime Minister would like to stay in office, and an end of war would mean an end to his government. And then he's exposed not only to a huge corruption trials plural, that are now at the stage where his defense and his theatrical show has ended. So it's now the prosecution has moved in with very serious evidence against him. And also, of course, he will be held responsible for the failures that led to the 7th of October attacks.
With us to talk through the prospects of a ceasefire in Gaza is Nomi Bar Yaacov, a distinguished international lawyer with extensive experience in peace negotiations and a Middle East specialist. Nomi, welcome. It feels like the drumbeat for a Gaza deal has been increasing in recent days. The seemingly positive message from Donald Trump on social media. Where do things stand now?
So yes, it's after the ceasefire in Iran, it seems only logical that there will be a ceasefire in Gaza. Israel has achieved its aims more than a year ago. Israel dismantled more than a year ago 23 out of 24 Hamas battalions, and Hamas no longer controls the majority of the Gaza Strip, and they're ready to hand over. But they're ready to hand over only under certain terms because, of course, they want to protect themselves, and there is the big question of an end of end of conflict, whether Israel would like to reserve the right to come back in if and when, and of course Hamas will not accept that. So we are getting closer, that's for sure. Tomorrow, Wednesday, there are going to be talks in Cairo between Hamas leaders and the Egyptian mediators and the Qatari mediators, and that's a positive sign. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is going to Washington Sunday night for a meeting with US President Donald Trump Monday morning. So certainly we are seeing a shift of gears. US President Donald Trump would like to see an end to all wars. He had promised that to have within 24 hours from taking office on the 20th of January this year. And 6 months on, I think he's just getting really fed up with certain leaders that are more warmongering than peace-seeking.
Past US proposals have involved a 60-day pause, releasing half the hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. Is that a realistic goal? Is that something mediators could persuade Hamas to agree to?
No, I think the problem isn't so much Hamas. I think the problem is that it would be much more logical. It would make a lot more sense to have them all released, to agree on everything promptly. The question really is, why drag it over 60 days? Why drag it for 2 months when so many things can go wrong? There is severe hunger in Gaza. Ceasefires are so complicated. It's not really necessary to drag it over such a long period. It would be far wiser for the mediators to try to agree tomorrow in Cairo and to persuade the Israeli Prime Minister to end the war in Gaza promptly. Certainly the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, the Israeli army, and the Israeli people would like, and of course the US, both Trump and I think the American citizens would like to see an end of war. They don't want to pour money into any IDF, any Israeli arms, and they don't want to see any more American bombs falling on civilians in Gaza. And as I said at the outset, the military leadership was taken out a very, very, very long time ago. So there isn't any reason to continue the war in Gaza. The only reason is that the Israeli Prime Minister would like to stay in office, and an end of war would mean an end to his government. And then he's exposed not only to a huge corruption trials plural, that are now at the stage where his defense and his theatrical show has ended. So it's now the prosecution has moved in with very serious evidence against him. And also, of course, he will be held responsible for the failures that led to the 7th of October attacks. So there is a lot at stake there for him. And that is the real question, and the question is, what is Donald Trump? Donald Trump has called already for the end of his trial, to the call to exonerate him. The Israeli president has concurred. There are a lot of shenanigans behind the scenes there, but the other big question is, who do you transfer the authority to in Gaza, so as to ensure stability? And if you'd like me to answer, I'm happy to elaborate.
One of the big sticky issues you point out is whether this is an end to the war or a pause. How can either side, Netanyahu with his hard right coalition partners who aren't happy with the idea of ending this forever, and Hamas who want an end, a formal end, how, after all of your years of negotiating experience, can either side be persuaded to budge on this sticky issue that's blocked progress in the past?
No, I think actually we know the answer. You need US guarantees. The US needs to be the guarantor for the end of the conflict, sort of in Gaza. So you're not going to have a ceasefire agreement without a monitoring, verification and implementation mechanism. That's not... no ceasefire will hold without a very detailed mechanism that needs to be worked out, and in this case also guarantees for an end of conflict. That's what's lacking, for example, in Iran. There was a push by Washington for a ceasefire, so the ceasefire really was a cessation in the bombing, but you're likely to see resumption of conflict in various shapes and forms. It's not the end of the Iranian-Israeli conflict. It's just an end to the way that to those particular 12 days of the bombing, and something similar is going to happen in Gaza. The question is, how do you ensure a safe transition? So the Hamas leaders that are staying in power want to be guaranteed that they will not be targeted by Israel, but they said a long time ago, maybe even a year ago, that they're prepared to transfer civilian control to a Palestinian technocratic body, and now I think they're also prepared to pass the mantle in terms of running the Strip also politically to a technocratic Palestinian government. That government a body. It's not the Palestinian Authority. So it has to be a body that is agreed on all Palestinians, and they have to move very quickly, because they're fractured. They're not a united body, the Palestinian people, and they really need to move quickly to agree on who is going to take over amongst the Palestinian technocrats the running of the Strip, with, of course, support of the leading Arab states and neighboring states. So that's Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Jordan and Egypt and Qatar. And everyone has to be involved in order to make sure that stability prevails. And of course, the US needs to be involved in one way or another, otherwise Israel, will not agree to pass on, to withdraw from the entire Strip.
How much has the return of international attention to the conditions in Gaza encouraged this progress now? Could Donald Trump actually be the peacemaker he says he is?
Well, he's not. Peacemaker is a grandiose title. I think, I would be hesitant, because I think in order to make peace, you need to look at a long-term sustainable peace. It's a bit, I remember being asked by a Financial Times lead correspondent, when Saddam Hussein's statue fell in 2003, and said, "Oh, is this the end of the war?" I said, "Oh, it's just the beginning." It's not. The question really is what, and everyone declared victory. And I think it's very peace is a complex concept. Peace is not just about ending a conflict. It's about ensuring that the conflict doesn't resume. And I go back to my earlier point: you need an international mechanism of monitoring, verification, compliance, plus international guarantees, and that mechanism is really important, because it needs to be able to respond to things that go wrong, and lots of things are going to go wrong, promptly, in a manner that the parties are going to be happy with, but that will give them answers and guarantee that there won't be an escalation. And we've seen that in Lebanon, that there is some continuation in Syria. That we're looking at the whole region, and these mechanisms are the key to resolving this. But first and foremost, there has to be a Palestinian technocratic body that will take over governance of Gaza promptly.
Nomi Bar Yaacov, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.